everyone. Welcome back to the Sci-Fi Feminist channel. Today, I have a really special and cool interview with Cheryl Ntumy. So, some background: she's a writer from Ghana, and she helped edit a collection of short stories called Sauúti Terrors. Am I saying that right? Is that all right? Sauúti Terrors. Yes, and I'm really excited. Today we're going to talk about all sorts of fun things. So thank you for joining us. Cheryl, thank you so much for spending this time together with me to have this interview. Can you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us a bit more about yourself, where you're from, etc.?
Okay, well, thank you, Janine. Thank you for inviting me. Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl, and I am based in Accra, Ghana. But I spent most of my life in Botswana, so I started writing when I was living in Botswana. And I write mainly speculative fiction, so sort of sci-fi, fantasy. That's kind of my area. I'm part of this group called the Sauútiverse Collective, which is a group of 10 African writers who are kind of dispersed all over the world, but all from the continent. And we wanted to create a shared universe where we could, set multiple stories and just kind of create this playground for African writers. And Sauúti Terrors is the second anthology to come from this world. So there've been lots of, standalone works that have come out of it, novels, novellas, and so on, and lots of short stories. But we've only put together one anthology before this, so this will be the second one. So it's quite an exciting thing for us to have another collection out, and we're really looking forward to it, and we hope everyone will enjoy it. And I'm also a member of this group called Betlo Literary Arts, which is based in Botswana. And really what we do is we try to support and develop creative writing in Botswana. We publish an online journal. We do writing workshops and things like that, just trying to kind of inspire and support writers in Botswana.
Wow, that's really important work that you are doing. I'm glad to hear it's all over Africa. Africa is so big and so diverse. How do you find the African continent? Like, what possibilities does it provide in terms of literature, in terms of science fiction, all the things that you've mentioned? What makes Africa great for something like this?
So many things. I think there's so much diversity, first of all. I think very often Africa is kind of spoken about as if it's this one thing, but it's so diverse. I mean, even just within a country, so many different cultures, languages, ways of life. And so it really feels like there's endless inspiration here and endless creativity. And we just haven't even begun to really tap into it. I think we're just now starting to, but there's so much room for stories that we haven't told. Even looking into our histories, our mythologies, all these different aspects of our cultures that haven't really been brought out and aren't known. So many stories that we can tell just from looking into our own, wherever we are in the corner of the continent, but also just from exchanging with each other, exchanging ideas with each other.
Yeah, I think like when I look at South Africa, where I am from, we have 11 official languages. I mean, it's so diverse. And like you say, I think a lot of people tend to flatten Africa. Like, it's one continent, it's one thing. In art history, there was like, this is African art, but it's like art from one tiny part in Africa that is now suddenly representative of all African art. So I can imagine that there are lots of diverse voices coming from the different parts of Africa. And I'm curious, so you mentioned speculative fiction and science fiction. I'm a huge fan of science fiction because it can do so much in terms of exploring future possibilities, reflecting on the present, kind of using the future. Science fiction also allows us to like speculate what the future could be like, without offending anyone, because it's still in the future, even though we're talking about the present. So I'm really curious, the genre of science fiction, how have you found, or how can I say, what possibilities has science fiction as a genre afforded African stories as a whole?
Oh, I think, we have so many different things that we want to write about, different issues, be they political or economic or whatever it is that might be going on. And science fiction, like you said, it really gives us a chance to kind of explore these things in a way that's not going to, light too many fires, but also to question things. It also gives us an opportunity to say, well, let's examine this particular issue or this particular way of doing things, or this political system or something, but in a way that has a little bit of distance, I guess. So it's safer, but it's also expansive. Like, it gives you a chance to really go deeper into it. Like, if we were to take this system and enhance it times 10, or what would it look like 100 years from now if we continue down this path? These kinds of questions. And what I've noticed is, with all the different African writers that I've been working with recently, like for this collection, there's so much room to explore, even though we're all writing in this shared world, everybody's coming at it with their own unique take and their own cultural context, and exploring specific things that they want to explore. So that's really interesting to me, just to see how we are all using science fiction and speculative fiction to interrogate things that matter to us as individuals and that matter to our communities. Yeah, so I think it's a really, really powerful way of examining the world. And it's also a really fun way to do it. You get to be really creative and innovative and come up with all kinds of wild things.
And what are the things that matter to you? That you are writing about? You mentioned like political things, economics, etc. Like, what is important to you as an African? I'm doing this, inverted commas, because I don't want to generalize African, but what matters to you?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of what I want to explore in my writing, or what I want to achieve in my writing, is that sense of, the bigger questions, I guess, the timeless questions. I'm really interested in things like self-determination and, freedom and autonomy, and what that looks like, different ways in which we oppress each other, different ways in which we hold each other and ourselves back, different, social rules and social dynamics that kind of hold us back. And what does it look like if the world looks different? If it's either worse or better in terms of those issues. But I also really want to, I feel like this is really important, to allow people to experience books in a way that's really familiar. Because, when I was growing up, I read a lot of different books from different places, whatever was available. But there's a very big difference between reading a book that's set in a world that is very different from yours. It's interesting and everything, but you don't really understand certain things. There are words that they use that don't mean anything to you. And then you read something that's set maybe in your own town, and everything in it is so familiar. Like, you can actually smell the smells and like taste the tastes, because it's in you. And I think that's a special feeling that everyone should have. So that's also part of it. I want to write stories that everyone can feel like, okay, this is me. This I see myself in this.
Hmm.
So those kind of
I
things are important.
I think the world, in general, especially in the 20th century, has been very dominated by European narratives and America, American stories. I think, like you say, I really feel now is kind of a time for Africa to shine and to share stories from where we see things from, where we come from. I don't know, in Botswana and in Ghana, where you are now, did you feel that the literature you read growing up, was it very European? Was it very like one-sided? And did that kind of light a spark in you to say, like, you know what, actually we need to tell stories that we can relate to, our stories? Was that sort of an inspiration for you, or am I like, taking it too big here?
No, I mean, I think it definitely was, because I did read some African books. We had like the Junior African Writers series, and I think I was very lucky because my parents are both teachers, and they had lots of friends that were teachers, so there were always books coming in and out of the house. And one of our family friends was an English teacher, so we had like boxes of these Junior African Writers books. But for the most part, the books that I was exposed to, at school, in the library, they were all from overseas. So, I was reading Nancy Drew and Babysitter's Club and, all the usual things, which I enjoyed, but it wasn't quite the same. And I think for me, the thing that I felt very strongly was that I loved fantasy and I loved science fiction, and I didn't find any African stories that were about that. They were all
Yes.
very literary fiction, very sort of like, or historical fiction or something like that. And yeah, it doesn't excite me in the same way as science fiction and fantasy. So I really wanted to write those stories for myself as well, not just for other people, also just for, this is a story I would have liked to see, when I was younger. Yeah.
And in this day and age, so 2025, like, we've recently seen a pandemic. We didn't see it, we lived through it. We are seeing all sorts of big things happening in the world, wars, America, I mean, all the things that are going on there, refugees in Europe, etc., etc. Lots of big things happening right now. Why do you think African stories matter, like right now, in this day and age? Why should we read them? Why are they important? What can we learn from them?
I mean, I think I can tie this to probably our vision with the Sauúti Collective.
Yes.
Because so much of it is about wanting to reflect a different way of being, the possibilities of what the world could look like. And we wanted to bring in aspects of our own culture and our own, backgrounds, and we're all from different places too. So it's like a mix of things. But those positive things, like the sense of community, and how that informs the way that people behave, the way that they see each other, the way that they see, situations, the way that they handle political situations. Having a council of elders rather than having just one individual that's kind of in charge and having that hierarchical system. So different systems of governance and different ways of engaging with the environment as well, with that sort of respect of, rather than an extractive process, it's more of a, I'm part of this environment takes care of me, so I take care of it. It's this symbiotic relationship. And all of those things are, I think, may come more naturally or more easily to us. And so they're invariably in our stories. They find they find their way into our stories. And I think that's something that the Western world could learn from.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the Western world tends to be a lot more individualistic and
Yeah.
yes, a lot more concrete jungle and hustle culture and all these things that yeah, whereas we operate on African time. We are not we're not in the rat race. I mean, we are, but to a different extent. I think we have a different worldview, and I think there's a
Yeah.
lot to be gained from that.
Yeah, it's the notion of Ubuntu, isn't it? Ubuntu, right? Yeah, that idea. I saw Tom Cruise mentioning it at the Academy Awards or something, because he shot Mission Impossible in South Africa, and part of it was shot here. And he was like, the South Africans have this notion of Ubuntu, which is that I am because we are, like, it's this collective thing. And yeah, I agree with you. I think we can use some of that right now. It feels like you say, the world is ruled by, a certain few men in power, and it's all about taking and capitalism and consumerism and trying to, elevate myself, but maybe we should look to each other and to community and to nature and what that can give and what we can give back to it. I really love that notion. And can you maybe touch on some of the other aspects of the Sauúti Terrors, that universe? So I understand it's this big world building project. You kind of created this world with different planets that, touch on different things. Can you maybe explain a bit more, like, what that is all about?
Okay, sure. So it's 5 planets, and each planet has its own distinct characteristics and so on. 5 planets orbiting 2 stars, 2 suns, and I'm not going to get into the physics because I'll get myself into trouble if I try to explain it. But basically, they have a creation myth in this world about how their universe came to be. And so their belief is, there's one planet that was the firstborn and then the others followed. And there's kind of some dissension about whether this creation myth is actually accurate and so on and so forth. And you have these tensions between the different planets that inform a lot of the events that take place. But one of the biggest things about it is that everything is based on sound. So it's an entirely oral culture. There is no written language. So everything is, based on speech, music, sound, magic, even the technology. Everything runs on sound. Sound is really like the primary resource.
Okay.
And that really affects the way that the stories are told. You'll find that there's a lot of talk of songs, like people singing things into being or using music to communicate. And there are also different species as well. It's not just humans, and they also have sound magic, and they use sound in interesting ways.
Okay.
And yeah, we wanted to bring in that sense of oral tradition.
Yeah.
And we decided to just kind of push it into a more sci-fi scenario, but drawing from that tradition.
Okay.
And it's also been a fun challenge for us because very often we are so used to a writing culture that we often catch ourselves making that mistake of saying, oh, so-and-so wrote a letter. Oh, wait, no, they couldn't have written a letter because there's no writing. So, we have to keep recalibrating our own mindsets about things. We also wanted it to be a really inclusive world in terms of, different things like people with different abilities, different gender expressions, different sexualities. We didn't want to have a situation where anyone could come into this world and feel like they would not belong. So that was also very important for us. And we also wanted it to be matriarchal. rather than patriarchal. So they have a mother goddess, and they have matriarchal societies as well. So that's quite a common theme that's kind of running through the world.
Wow. As I'm hearing about it, I'm like already loving it. um, it's it's interesting. I've done some interviews with a lot of authors, and it seems like the idea of a matriarchal society, a more feminine society that's in touch with nature, that's in touch with community, in touch with each other. I love the idea of an oral tradition. Again, it's that thing of like the writing is a very Western thing. So I love how coherent it is, and it seems like it's really the thing we're all longing for right now is this really feminine approach to things. This world sounds really beautiful, and I can't wait to read it now that I'm listening to you talk about it. What I find very interesting is that you have one world, but various writers contributing to it. Am I understanding that correctly? I think that's a really interesting approach. I've never heard about that. I've never seen that in literature. How does something like that come together, even?
Well, it's actually a very cool thing. It was new to me as well when I came on board. I had done collaborative projects, but not like this. It really came together because of a partnership with Brittle Paper and Syllable. So, Brittle Paper. I'm very familiar with the publication, the online publication, Brittle Paper, that deals with African literature.
Okay.
And Syllable is a US-based organization run by a gentleman named Fabrice Guerrier. I'm probably mispronouncing his name. Sorry, Fabrice, who is originally from Haiti. And what Syllable does is they're kind of redefining how the arts work as a communal thing rather than an individual thing. So they set up multiple world-building groups. Like there's one for Caribbean writers, there's one for kind of a focus on environmental stories and things like that. So this was one of the world-building collectives that was set up through that model.
Okay.
And they have a really good model that you can follow. They have a contract that we all sign, we all agree to, which basically gives us shared ownership of this world. It also means that we make decisions collectively, we come up with ideas collectively, and we all contribute whatever we contribute to the world, and then it becomes part of the bigger world.
Wow.
So it's been a process. It's very interesting and very exciting because you have so many different people, and they all have different things to bring to the table. You have we have an engineer, we have a music teacher, we have people in the IT and computer world, we have doctors, we have a lawyer. So all these different talents have been really, really helpful in our brainstorming sessions. One person will be able to talk about music, and especially because this is a world that runs on sound, music is so important. And somebody else will be able to do the technical stuff, like, okay, well, how do the planets actually orbit and things like that, all the science stuff. Then somebody else will talk about the linguistics, how the different languages are formed, the names, and so on. So it's been quite a journey, and it's very exciting to work in this way. I think to kind of, we're so used to working on our own as writers. You sit in your little corner and you write your story by yourself. But this is so much more enriching. Definitely, I mean, I can see the vast difference between how my work was before I joined and how it's grown since. So yeah, I think we're onto something. I think this needs to be something that becomes popular, that spreads across the world, hopefully.
Yeah, this is such an interesting way of writing because, like you say, the creative process tends to be a very personal thing. And because I studied fine arts, and whenever we had a group project, we would all dread it. Like, oh no, this is the worst. Because as creatives, we're always like, my idea is what I want to do. It's not very easily a collaborative thing, but I think it's so beautiful how you can this way of writing actually makes sense if you think about it. It's amazing no one has approached it this way before, because like you say, you get different perspectives from different viewpoints, and I think from a world building view, this must be really great. You can draw on the strengths of various types of people and their ideas. And I can imagine the growth you experience through that must be light years ahead of, the growth you experience just doing your own thing.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
And what are some of your influences? So, in terms of literature or, anything, any people or works of art, literature that shaped you as a writer. Can you maybe point out some of those for us?
That's going to be hard because there's so many, I feel like, and also at different stages, different things influence me more. So it's a bit, I guess, probably the biggest influence has been mythology and folktales.
Okay.
I always really liked the timeless nature of those stories, and I always wanted to tell stories that would be like that would be not necessarily of a particular time, but that would be relevant no matter when they are told or read. I also really just like that structure, the story structure of once upon a time something happened, and there's a very clear I guess moral or ethical arc to the story as well. Like there's a real purpose to it, that you understand that this story is to help you understand something or to help you learn something. And yeah, I really enjoyed those kind of stories growing up, and I think that has influenced me a lot in terms of how I write, and also maybe my style of writing possibly. But then also like things like Star Trek. I really like Star Trek. And I liked that vision of a utopian world where, we don't need money anymore and you just work for the passion and all of those things. That also really inspired me to kind of envision different worlds.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of Star Trek. This vision of this really beautiful future that's inclusive, that's, and like you say, we don't work for money. We work because we love it. That's based on exploration and like higher ideals. That's the best part of it by far. Yeah. And so future projects, what's lying ahead? What are you working on now? What can we expect from you or from the Sauúti Collective in the future?
Well, we have we actually have two installments of Sauúti Terrors. So the first one is coming out in January, and then the next one will be, oh, sorry. I'm using my phone, so it just fell over. Sorry about that.
No.
The first one comes out in January, the second one comes out the following year. So we have a nice big gap in between. And then we have potentially another Sauúti project, which I can't talk too much about yet.
I understand.
It's still very early days. But we also have Sauúti novels coming out. We have one this year. I think we've had two this year, actually, by Eugene Bacon, and then one coming next year. It might be next year or early 2027 by Adelihin Ijasan. We've had novellas and things coming out as well, lots of short stories coming out. So I think that in terms of the Sauútiverse, the most imminent things are Sauúti Terrors, Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Right.
And then personally, I have a novel coming out next year, in April, I believe. I'll have to confirm, but I think it's in April. And I'm working on a series, a romantasy series. I also really like romance. So I thought, why not combine fantasy and romance, two things that I enjoy, which I think will be fun because it's an African romantasy. And hopefully it is interesting and fun and something different that people will enjoy.
I'd love for you to come and talk about that to us if you want to, about your personal novel too.
I would love to.
It sounds really interesting.
I would love to. I think I'm not sure exactly what the situation is in terms of I need to get clear on exactly the dates and things like that, and when I'm allowed to talk about it. I think I can talk about it though. It's a fantasy novel, the one that's coming out next year, and I had written it a while ago, and self-published it, and then withdrew it, and then I found a publisher. Yeah, and it's called "They Made Us Blood and Fury."
Oh.
It's about a community, a small community in a nation that's similar to Ghana, like very loosely based on Ghana, kind of fantasy version. And this small community has a very unique culture and a very unique biology. And they have silver blood, and their blood is sort of, it contains traces of magic.
Oh.
And so they're as being kind of holy and, special. But then a crisis happens when their queen, who produces this magical blood, nears her death, and her daughters, who are supposed to take over from her, have not yet matured. And this has never happened before. It's supposed to be this constant cycle where the queen dies and then the daughters take over and so on and so forth. But now that cycle is coming to an end and they're panicking and they don't know what to do. And so somebody decides to unleash a terrible, terrible weapon, which is only supposed to be used as a last resort, and chaos kind of ensues after that.
All right. I'm intrigued. Yeah, let's talk about it more in April. I think that would be really great. And then finally, is there anything on your heart that you want to share? Maybe some insights or some encouragement, or anything that, as a last word, you would like to share with the listeners.
I guess I would just like to say that, I'm sure everybody who's listening already is, a very big fan of science fiction and of books in general. But I feel like as much as art has always been important, it's especially important now. Not just because it inspires us or, because it gives us hope, but also because I think a lot of people really struggle to imagine a different world, and I've noticed that even with us writing in the Sauútiverse, we keep forgetting. We keep kind of bringing our earth baggage into and then somebody else has to point out, wait, but no, the Sauútiverse doesn't work like that. It's so ingrained in us. And I think these kinds of stories, they give us the ability to imagine a different world, which gives us the ability to create a different world. So I just hope that, we never lose sight of that, and we always manage to tap into that imagination within us and that inspiration and ability to see things differently, and to believe that it's actually possible for things to be different.
That's a beautiful note to end on. Cheryl, thank you so much for meeting me and talking to us today. And yes, I can't wait for the short stories to come out. I will definitely be reading them. And I hope we can, talk again in the future. I think it's really important work that your collective is doing, and I think it's a really great time for these stories to emerge, and I think they're really relevant and really important for us to hear right now.